All right, sounds good.
Hey, what's going on, guys? I am here with the founder of Ecom Solutions, which is the software that I use to run my FBA business. This is Jason O'Neill. Jason, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, Tyler. I really look forward to getting to talk to you. I get to talk to you all the time, but we don't really talk out in public much. So I'm excited to get to do this with you and share whatever I can possibly share with your audience.
Yeah, and yeah, like you said, a lot of the stuff we talk on a daily basis, but a lot of the stuff is just internal stuff about what's going on inside of Ecom Solutions. And I don't get really the chance to sit down and ask you questions for an hour straight about just how you're feeling about everything and like just all the updates that have happened, where you were 4 months ago when we last talked and where we are today. And that's kind of what I wanted to do in this interview, was just kind of get your thoughts on how everything's going, how the industry has been developing, and I guess, like, what do you see as, the challenges moving forward, that maybe you didn't see 4 months ago? I know a lot of stuff like has happened with inflation and fuel prices and just lots of stuff that we could touch on. But
Oh yeah, probably lots of talking points, things that, until you don't know, right?
yeah,
Especially like it's been a very interesting learning curve for us, to really see how inflation impacts like the entire economy and how it comes in. Like you don't see it on the store shelves until it just happens, but like you see all this stuff that's happening on the backside that creates kind of these price hikes that's happening. It's pretty insane to be honest with you, to see how much stuff has gone up, and that's at all levels, of the entire supply chain, from manufacturing shutdowns, from COVID. That was kind of the initial catalyst to it. You had, there was a lot more demand than there was supply for long periods of time. There was big, just getting stuff into the country has become significantly more expensive. Now we have gas prices and what's going on with the war in Ukraine and how that's affecting everything. It's like yeah, at the end of the day, it's like the consumer is the one that ends up kind of taking it on the chin, sadly enough. But we as business owners, we get to kind of thrive in this kind of environment, regardless of whether or not, the cost goes up. It goes up across the board. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So however you want to kind of like move, I'll be nimble with you, any way that you want to kind of like just discuss some of these different talking points.
Yeah, one of the biggest things, I mean, you and I have talked about it a lot, and I think, I guess we'll just start off with this because there's so many people, that I work with that have had complaints about prices going up on items, et cetera. But as you know, like you just said, the consumer is the one that, is going to be hurt the most by this, not necessarily the sellers. As a seller, you have to have a margin that, you're going to want in order to even be in the business. And every seller, the price is going up for them on their distribution side.
Yeah.
So in that regard, it's not like the consumer is not going to have to pay an extra 10% if we have to pay an extra 10%. And
Yeah,
no,
that's how the economy works, right? Like there's always a markup on the good, depending on how many times that good gets stopped in the middle of the, from like manufacturing all the way to consumer. At every single kind of like step of the path, there's a little bit of an upcharge,
yeah,
in order for that kind of middleman to operate within the whole range of supply chain.
yeah. And we see it where, if we have an item that goes up in price, we replenish it. There still might be people on the listing that got that original price and they just haven't reordered, and like they don't understand the price is going up. So there are situations I see now where people still keep that low price. They probably sell out and they're like, oh, why did I sell out at this price when everyone else is going to be selling at this price? Now I have to reorder. I could have made more money. So what I've been doing, just like a tip to anyone out there watching in this, what I've been doing is, if I notice on an invoice or if I go in and reorder something, I'll just, check my inventory. I have a very intimate relationship with my inventory. I have less than 100 ASINs. So I kind of understand what the prices are and when prices change. And I'll go in and I'll actually, on my inventory that I purchased before, I'll go in and up the margin on there, because I know when I reorder, I'm going to have to sell at that margin anyway. So there's no point in me selling out at that old price when I know that all these other sellers are just going to sell out and not be able to price at that low price anymore anyway. So that's something that's really important to kind of get the most out of your inventory, is if things go up in price, like get ahead of it. Don't just wait until your next order. You know, that's my opinion on the whole situation. But maybe you
Yeah,
have a take on
let
that,
me,
fellow.
like, Keith, our VP of business operations, he's really in the mix with our supply chain, right? He's the one that's really having the conversations with our supply chain reps. And it's kind of one of those things where we're living in an inflationary environment right now. So even if you look at almost anything, and it's gone up in price over the last 6 months. So, it's expected that the environment's not going to stop being inflationary for at least another 6 months from today, right? We're in March. I think that the soonest that I've heard is like in the middle of March, which is when the middle of August, which is when inflationary environment should kind of settle in. Whether that's the case or not, I really don't know. I'm not an economist. However, what that means is if you're locking a price in today, you're still getting it. If it's going to continue going up in cost, I mean, you're still getting it today at a better price than you're going to get it probably tomorrow. And as long as there's still demand for that product, everyone sells through their units. And, depending on what your kind of strategy is, if you could even maybe use that to your advantage as a buyer, realizing that prices will probably continue going up on things. And, you might want to think of you're buying low if you're buying today versus what you're going to be buying it at when you re-up in a few months from now, or 6 months from now, if it goes up another 10% or so. So at the end of the day, you could see how that happens when you go shop at a grocery store and you realize that you used to buy ketchup for $2.99 and now it's like $3.49. That's kind of like, it's not often that it's like this massive jump, but it's like really across the board on everything.
Yeah.
That has kind of, like, just material costs have gone up, right? Like tariffs to ship stuff into the country has gone up. If you think of how the supply chain really works, it's manufactured most of the time overseas. It comes over on a shipping cargo container. And, so there's tariffs that get paid on those things at that level. And then you have, suppliers or manufacturers who are receiving it off the trucks, kind of distributing that stuff into their supply chain, depending on, how they set up. You have some middlemen in the middle of that process, right? The supply chain set up in a very specific way where you have distributors that have relationships with, retailers, and those manufacturers generally are working with distributors, and those distributors are buying in pretty massive quantities, but they're still having to pay freight costs, right? They're having to pay for the labor to offload products into their warehouse. So all those little things get built in to the actual cost of those products. And, if labor goes up, well, the cost of the product goes up because it takes you more money to produce the same thing, labor wise. So all these things that are going on in the economy, minimum wage is rising, gas prices going up. The end result is everything goes up.
Yeah, no, that is, yeah. It's an obvious statement, but a lot of people don't think of it, that way. And they just panic when they see that their costs are going up. It's like, no, it's not just you.
I know what it's like the first time it happened.
Entire world.
First time it happened to me, I was the same exact way. The supplier says, hey, the price goes up. And I'm like, I don't want to pay more. And they're like, well, too bad.
Yeah.
Like you have to pay more. It is what it is. Right. So,
Yeah.
Not realizing it, you just don't know until you kind of go through it. And then you're like, oh, I get it now. It makes sense. I understand how this really works.
And you're not panicking. Like, I'm not losing money. I'm still going to be able to make my margin. But
yeah.
So I mentioned like, October 31st, that was when our last interview was. That was 4 months ago. Just, give us an idea of like your mentality, your thoughts on just ecom solutions as a whole, like where it was then and where you thought it was going. I know 4 months isn't that long, but actually in the grand scheme of of e-commerce world, 4 months is kind of a long time. I mean, I've been suspended in that 4 month period. I've gotten my account back in that 4 month period. I've, learned a lot along the way. So what about you? Just since our last interview, like where do you see, ecom solutions 4 months from now or whatever? And like, how did you see it back then versus what it is now?
I think that our mission remains the same. It's really to become the world's largest marketplace of wholesale products. We are essentially, we're an aggregator of information. Like we're using our business relationships in a way and trying to take what would normally be a several month process for an individual seller to go through the process of setting up relationships with suppliers, figuring out the technical side of things and how to run those spreadsheets into product finders. If you get a spreadsheet, how to format it, all that stuff. There's these little areas where people generally are going to fail. And, the third being the prep side of things, taking the prep off the plate. Who wants to have a house full of boxes that they get home to after work in order to, build their their side hustle. It becomes more of a terrible job than it does a side hustle if you're having to kind of like do everything on your own, because it's a really tedious process. A lot of suppliers, they generally don't love Amazon sellers. There's a lot of reasons for it, mostly because the average Amazon seller is just kind of more of a biz hoppy type of person, where they're jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing, depending on what's hot today. So you get that suppliers don't want to really waste a whole lot of time with sellers who aren't going to really take things seriously. So we run across it as well, right? Like there's some sellers that are significantly more experienced as business owners, or just from a mental standpoint, they have much tougher skin in order to kind of weave through the challenges that you're going to face as a retailer selling on the Amazon platform. So the mission really doesn't change. It's in the feedback that we receive and where do we see ourselves going. It's really to continue to focus on our very best partners, the people who get the most value out of what it is that we're doing, because we understand there's going to be people that try to get in and have expectations to where everything's always going to be roses and sunshine. And that's just not the reality of being an Amazon seller in the first place, right? Like there's always challenges that you have to overcome. I would say if anything, what have I learned the most is if you expect to live off your store, you better have a lot of money to put into inventory, and it can't be credit cards. It's got to be like liquid capital, whether it's coming from like business loans that you have long payoff terms. You can get an SBA loan that gives you 10 years payoff term versus a 12-month payoff term, not as good of a loan, right? Credit cards are hard to fund a business because you just don't know how long it's going to take for certain products to turn. It could be a 30-day turn process. It could be a 6-month. It could be a 12-month process, depending on what your goal is. There's sometimes, right, where you might want to wait 6 months to make 100% ROI. And that you're going to get it, but it's going to take 6 months from now versus I just want to turn my inventory because I need to live off this money. Right. Right. So I would say the biggest thing that I would like to educate people on is like building I was talking to you about this yesterday, this whole idea of like, does anyone ever go buy a house and say, I'm going to live off the equity in my house? Right. Nobody does that. And I think that there's kind of a weird dropshipper mentality that comes into the inventory side of things and expect it to work the same, right? They expect their cash flow to be kind of turning at the same level where, if they don't have that daily action or if things are taking longer for it to sell, they get frustrated. And instead of doing the things that need to be done, such as buying inventory and building that inventory value up, they're focusing on when Amazon does something that they don't like, right? It's all about kind of like where you put your focus to. Do you focus on the stuff that sucks, which we all have to go through? Or do you focus on getting good at the skill, which is, identifying the products, figuring out how many to buy, right? If anything's changed probably from the 4 months ago to now, I've become just personally much more aggressive in purchasing, where I've gained confidence in I, I know what my upside significantly lower than my downside. So why not lean into that? And if it takes you the same exact amount of time to make a buying decision, where you can make a decision to buy several hundred units of something versus 20, it's the same exact activity, but your time becomes much more valuable the more money that you put in the game into the game, right? Like this essentially, it's your money works for you. It's a completely different dynamic, right? You don't have to sit there sourcing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to make money, right? You can do it in short spurts and then your money works for you. So if someone expects to live off of that money, like I'm quitting my job, I'm traveling the world, I'm going to flex, I'm going to get on in my Lambo, you better just have a couple $1 million worth of inventory to make that happen. And that's okay. But having realistic expectations of building an asset, which is this, right? Like you're building an asset, you're building equity in a business, which is an asset. You can sell that asset if you decide that you want to do it, or you can cash flow off that asset and you can continue building your cash flow producing machine, right? So it's I guess we will continue to focus on the people that really that message right there rings true to.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. And that's, anyone that's come through any of my affiliate stuff, or, anytime I've been doing videos on ecom solutions on my channel, that's a point that I've, tried to hit home too. Like you need money to make money in this business. It's not like drop shipping. Like if someone gets in and is frustrated that they're not turning 5K into 100K in a year, that's impossible. Like that's like literally not possible in this business. It's possible in drop shipping if you work super hard, like hire the right people, whatever. But in this business, zero shot of that happening. If you want to make 100K in a year doing this, you probably need like 150K of inventory in your store at, all times.
Yeah, and I would challenge someone to just play the long game. Like
Yeah.
how about like we just build your wealth. Don't take all of your money out of your business, right? That this is your asset. Like every year that it becomes infinitely, or not infinitely, but it becomes multiples of the value that you create in that business. It becomes every year it becomes multiplied by that. So if you can build some serious equity and serious like cash flow, and that becomes valuable. Whereas if you're building it to live off of it, again, it's just, I think of this as an investment vehicle. Like selling on Amazon is an investment vehicle more than it is a lifestyle business vehicle.
Yeah. And
I think that,
but like you were saying too, like, the longer you're in it, the more opportunities there are that come in for you to scale quicker. Like people are willing to give you loans. Like when I went to the conference, the Prosper Show, there were probably 5 or 6 like capital companies there that were just willing to give people money who were Amazon sellers. The longer history you have selling and proving that you're a good seller, you could double your inventory essentially overnight by just having someone who gives you money because they know you're good for it, because you have that, that proven word. So yeah, the longer you stick in it, the quicker it's going to scale, like in those periods where people just throw money at you for inventory.
yeah, that's there's so much money out there these days where people are just, I mean, gosh, I don't know when or where, but I get calls all day, every day from these guys from New York. They always, Jason, you looking for some money? Get you some money right now. Hey, how much money you want to get? And they don't take no for an answer either. They're very, very, but it's just a sign of how much money there is out there. And as you start displaying that you're capable of managing money in a non-YOLO fashion, right? Like if you can show reasonable use of that money, and you can show growth of that money, and that you grow the cash available to the business, it gets significantly easier, right? I think with anything, it's the first year is going to be your learning curve of going through any difficult kind of learning curve or transition, to pick up a skill. Because for some, it's going to be learning how money really works, or how to use money, how to use debt, to build some type of asset. That's been my probably the biggest, the what's helped me the most over the years is just understanding that I don't have to come up with all the money on my own. I can use other people's money, and as long as I can get a better return, as long as I can turn that cash into more than it costs me to do it, it's just it's a mathematical formula, right? Like
Yeah.
just
I mean, you're
continue
paying
trying to
8% a
increase.
year on like a lot of these loans. You should
Yeah,
be making like 15 to 20% a month ROI minimum is like the
yeah,
worst I've seen on
yeah,
that. So every single month you're like, you're paying back more than the interest for the total year.
yeah.
So yeah, it makes sense to, take those loans out once you, like you said, you're responsible enough, you're going to, they know you're going to pay back the loan. You know that personally, you're not going to do anything stupid with the money. If someone gives you 100K, it's going straight into inventory. Like that's when I
Yeah,
got
not
my,
renting the Lambo, right? Not
yeah,
renting the Lambo to show off to your friends that you're doing like big things, right? Don't do that.
yeah,
Take that money, put it into an asset, something that's going to produce you a return. And just that mindset right there is the transformational shift that successful people that know that master the game of money, they go through. They understand money is a tool that can be used to create wealth. Even if there's a cost to that money, how much more can I make by using someone else's dollar than myself? I mean, there's a hierarchy to it all. And I think of Amazon, if you think of it, if like you ever wanted to be like a day trader or a crypto trader, this is like the ultimate mini market where you can take small bets on a whole bunch of things, but you have so much more data that supports your bet. And the amount of times that you can get it right is, like you can within a pretty high degree of certainty predict what you're going to make when you source a product, right? Like, if you do your due diligence, you're going to be right significantly more than you're wrong. And each of those times you're right, it's worth significantly more anyways over time than when you're wrong anyways, right? So when you get that formula, how much money can you get access to, right? And do you really believe that? Once you buy in, right? Like I've told you this, like once you really, really buy into that, it's just how much money can you get into the market? I'm trying to every single week still go through a few hours worth of buying because I want to put new SKUs into the market. I always want to be adding new things into that market, and that keeps the cash flow really consistently coming in as well, where we don't have these big lulls. We're constantly kind of doing our 3 Ps. We're sourcing new products, we're replenishing our products, and then we're making sure that we're taking the old inventory and we're working on moving that inventory. In some cases we have to take losses, but again, we look at the whole big picture of it all and say, well, yeah, sure, I lost $50 on that buy, but I made 500 on the other one right next to it. And I was right 9 out of the 10 times. Anyways,
yeah.
you know what I mean? So that's kind of like why I say this is sort of like a very miniaturized version of being able to participate in Wall Street. And instead of you're getting undervalued companies, you're getting undervalued products, right? You're trying to buy products at a discount for what they're selling for in the actual marketplace.
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure. So, I guess moving on, the biggest, okay, so I guess, yeah, the biggest challenge for me, over the past few months was, my suspension, I guess, and just like the motivation of coming back. And I've told you this of, researching new products. I had that 11, like, it doesn't seem like a long period of time, but 11 days of like not sourcing products actually will hurt you down the road because you don't have that constant flow, of inventory, coming in, I guess. But yeah, for other clients, what would you say like the biggest challenge that you've heard for, just sourcing or like whatever, like what are some of the roadblocks people are coming to you with, that you see within ecom solutions? And like,
I would say, initially a lot of times it's buying incorrect amounts of stuff, like going in on, a variation without kind of confirming that variation, right? Like that's some of the kind of the technical skill that you learn as you go. Mostly it's leaning in I think that a lot of times people just underbuy, on something that's really good. If you think about the psychological side of selling on Amazon, like let's make a point right here. Let's say a product sells 300 times a month, and you see that there's already 600 units on that product right now, right? You're probably less inclined to want to jump in on that because you're thinking, oh, I might face a drawdown. I might have to face some type of, drop or race to the bottom, right? In order to try to beat the seller out. Whereas, there's cases to where you might have something that's moving pretty significant amount of time, and you could get the early mover bonus if you jump in on that product and you buy sufficient amounts of products. Let's say that there's a half a month supply of something where you could buy 2 months and you can own that buy box, and probably psychologically kind of trip people out to where they don't want to deal with having to compete against that, and especially in our system where it shows like, oh, there's already 400 spoken for. Where right now, I think if there's any like, oh, well, several people buy the same thing, is because everyone's limping in, right? Like everyone's kind of like dabbling their foot in the water instead of just going at it and saying, all right, I'm going to trust my instinct and I'm going to buy enough and I'm going to dominate this one and get everyone else off of it, and get, if you just kind of approach it from a psychological standpoint and understand like what kind of like why wouldn't I buy this product? Well, probably when there's just too much of it already flowing in the market, that's when you find the race to the bottom, is when there's just more supply than there is really demand. So it's kind of being able to play that pendulum right there. Too much demand, maybe not today. Doesn't mean tomorrow it's not a good one. But right now, I think that there's also probably some things that people could do better is on their replenishments, like really get a handle on keeping their products flowing into Amazon consistently, not running out of stock as much, which again, in some cases means buying enough to keep it stocked, keep your best stuff. You're going to find that 10%, 20% of your products really do a good bit of your overall profits over time. So, it's better if you keep those 10 or 20% stocked than everything else collectively,
Yeah, well, the thing too that I'm thinking about with like restocks is one, Amazon prefers giving people the buy box who, are staying in stock more often than not. And also it really does discourage competition when they see, in the Keepa history that, oh, this person is literally always on the listing and this is, the price, and they always have the stock. That's going to discourage me, I know personally, from being on a listing more so than if I see like someone come on and then they go off and the price goes up, and like, it's just like, they're not doing a good job with that inventory management. I think, those look like at least that they have more opportunity than when there's a consistent seller on there. So yeah, I 100% agree. Replenishments is probably the biggest, or okay, yeah, like product research first and then replenishment second biggest part of the business.
I think that people that really spend time doing those things just do dramatically better. Like people that really put the time into the stores and really start learning how those three kind of like parts of the business operate, the sourcing or the procuring side, where you're buying new SKUs that you've never sold before, that's part of the business. If you just do that consistently, right? There's a lot of inconsistency with a lot of people as well. Well, they'll kind of like do it a little bit here, and then they'll fall off and don't do it at all, make a bunch of sales, and they're really happy. And then they sell out of all their good stuff. And then you're stuck with your dogs, right? You're stuck with the stuff that doesn't move as much. It doesn't mean it doesn't move, but you're stuck with the stuff that might move every few days. It feels like you're not making any progress because, you got just all your slow moving products, so that's where just being proactive on, if I think your audience is largely made up of a lot of people that have been in the drop shipping space in the past. If you think of, it's no different, right? Like it's literally the amount of SKUs that you have that's going to really be the differentiator. The number of units overall that you have, that's going to be the big differentiator, right? Like if you have just naturally speaking, if you had 30,000 SKUs in your drop shipping store, you're almost guaranteed to fall into some sales, right? Like you're going to make sales, right? Where I think a lot of times people come into the FBA side and they kind of dabble a little bit. They'll get 10 SKUs, 15 SKUs. Some of them take forever to fulfill upon, right? Because the supply chain's not always instant. You might have to wait for time for a time for something to actually like make it on the US soil. It might be in manufacturing production right now. It might be something that is going to be in stock in 6 months. One of the biggest challenges I think a lot of people need to overcome is really that microwave mentality of needing it done today, right? Like if you think of when you do the work today, the value of that work is going to be paid out over the next 12 months or longer, right? If you can delay gratification and understand that and put the work into the one thing, one of the three that makes you money. You got sourcing new products, you got repricing your existing inventory to make sure that you're moving it. Generally speaking, the older the inventory gets, the less valuable it is, unless you have a game plan to say, I'm going to wait it out. I don't care how long it takes. I have a goal. I'm going to make 100% on this product, even if it takes me 9 months, right? If you think of this more as an investor would think of it, instead of I need to live off this money today. That's why I say that, if you go into it with long-term kind of perspective and you just start putting the work in where it doesn't feel like your time's worth anything in the beginning because you're buying stuff. You don't have anything in the store yet. Oh, this is out of stock. It's going to take 6 months. I bought 10 products. Three of them are back ordered. It's like, you just got to put the time and energy into the front end work. And if you do it consistently, you'll be rewarded with having consistent products go into. I think if people were to really look themselves in the mirror and say, how much work am I really doing? And be honest with themselves, a lot of people will find themselves doing much less than they're saying they're really doing, right?
Yeah. No, for sure.
Or they just have much less cash in the game. Maybe they're working really, really hard, but they have very little cash in the game. Like you could work almost not at all if you have a lot of cash in the game. But getting the cash in the game, that's kind of that's the battlefield right there, right? Like you can't skip that part.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
Like you
100%.
can't, you can't just outsource it to someone. There's no VAs out there that are just like really, really good at buying at this point. That's the part where you will gain more value in your life if you personally master that and don't try to outsource it to someone else, because that's kind of like if you're trying to be Warren Buffett and you're trying to be an investor. That's like Warren Buffett doing all the research, and he owns that information, right? That's why people are willing to pay him large sums of money, because he owns that information. Whereas, I think a lot of people go into this as well with a kind of a dropship mentality of how fast can I get a VA to do everything for me? And I can just sit back and let the money rake in. And that's just not reality, right? There's a skill that needs to be developed.
Yeah. I think
if you don't develop it,
I think there's some people in my group actually who are using VAs with some success, but for the most part, I mean, you got to get in there regardless of how you want to do it and learn yourself for a few months, because even if you only do it for 2 to 3 months, the products that you order from day one, you might not have enough information to know whether those were good buys or not until month 4 or 5. So in my mind, you really need to like do it yourself, become an expert, see how things go for 6 months, and then pass on what you've learned to somebody and hold their hand for, a couple months, making sure you're reviewing all their buys. This is why it's good. This is why it's not, whatever. And in my mind, I guess it'd probably take like a year to get a VA to where you want to just pass everything off to them.
And you have to know what to teach them too, right? Like you have to know the stuff well enough to be able to pass that knowledge along to someone else in a way that they can understand it, right? That's part of the growth curve of just us as, leaders, is the better that we can get at taking something that might be considered complex to someone else and trying to simplify it in a way that they can really get it, especially considering if we're talking the VA route, they're not native English speakers, so like the comprehension of that, it's a different challenge, so if you're not like really in tune with the little intricacies, you're probably going to have a hard time ever really truly getting the best out of that. And in reality, there's really not that much work that you got to outsource anyways, right? Like, it's
Yeah,
not
no.
like you're not working 8 hours a day, on this business. You're generally working a little bit here, buying some new products, you're doing some repricing here, you're doing some replenishments here. All that stuff collectively might be a few hours worth of work in a given week. The rest of the time, if you're like me, it's hitting refresh on your screen, right?
Yeah.
Which we can't call that a job. We can't say that that's work.
Oh, that is the best part about, ecom solutions is you could literally just spend, you could say, all right, every Friday from 9 a.m. to 12, I'm gonna just work on my store. And that's probably the only time you would need all week. If you, did the research, ordered a few $1,000s worth of products, like the average person, I'm saying, like, ordered a few
Yep.
$1,000s worth of products,
Yep.
made sure, invoices were all up to date, paid, whatever, and just did like some random stuff between those hours that, you need to do every week. Yeah, I could see this business literally being a 3 to 4 hour business once you have that front loaded
You
store of
kind of
like
just get
all
good
the
at the
items,
sourcing side, right? That
Yeah.
the more work you put in on learning that side of things, and like the faster you get through that learning curve, the better off you're going to be, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's where you're going to have your fallout, is it's in that, you know, I've always wondered, I said, I say this a lot of times about, entrepreneurs. It's like, do you really like your business? Like, if you don't do any of the work, do you really like the business, or do you just like the idea of a
Yeah.
business? Like, it shouldn't really seem like, oh God, I got to work all these hours, right? Like, if you like what you're doing, you don't mind doing it, right? Like, you get excited to do the work,
Yeah.
you
When it
know?
becomes a burden, it like for me at one point in like a couple years ago, drop shipping did feel more like a burden than anything else. And that's when my business started like, going downhill. Um,
So
so
many moving parts of drop shipping. You need a team. That's when I
yeah,
realized, like, when we made that really, the transition away from like putting a lot of energy into it. It's like, you see how many people it takes to do the drop shipping versus like the FBA side. I mean, if I'm just a seats client, which I am, it's like, there's really not much work to do, right? Like, it's
no, just
not
sourcing.
that, I mean,
Just the
it's,
sourcing and dealing with Amazon's, stuff that happens on
yeah.
their end. But
Yeah, you got your stranded inventory that you got to
yeah,
deal with. They're always kind of doing that, or your low pricing errors. That's a big one, right? Where they just randomly deactivate products because they say you're selling it for too little or you're selling it for too much.
mm,
It's a nuisance, but it's not that much, even if that might be, 10, 15 minutes a day, if that, right? Like, that would
yeah,
be, when you have to solve those problems, it's very, very little. And those
yeah,
are things that VAs could really do for you. Now, the
yeah,
one thing that I just have a hard time with a VA doing is picking my products. They can get them to me. What I do is they submit them to me, and then I make the final decision on it, what I want to approve and how much of it I want to buy. I've not had an easy time being able to get that kind of across to anyone else yet. So I don't mind doing it.
no, that's a good way to do it. Because even then, I mean, what percentage of products would you say your VA is like they submit to you that you actually are like, okay, this, like, I'm buying this?
So it used to be really bad. Like, it used to be a very low amount, and it took really educating them on. And I only have like two people that do it for me right now. So it used to be a lot higher. And me, you could probably tell when I'm unhappy with something, I'd let someone know, like, hey, this is crappy, like, don't do this, stop doing this, like, why did
Mhm.
you even submit this to me? So that I use that as an opportunity to educate and say, this is what's wrong, this is why this is bad. And you do that enough, they get pretty good. So at this point, I approve most everything, almost everything I buy,
Nice.
because I can see now that they're thinking along the same lines that I'm thinking. I can see why they're submitting this to me, without having to necessarily ask, like, oh, okay, why you submit this one that has Amazon all over it? Well, Amazon's sharing the buy box 30% of the time, which you wouldn't really see unless you dug a little bit deeper. You
Yeah.
did
So
you
they,
did that little bit extra research.
that they're looking at the Keepa chart. They're like are
Yeah.
understanding things more in depth. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes
So
sense.
it was a process to get them there, though. Like, we tried to kind of do it the wrong way, where we tried to scale a whole bunch of stores at one time. bad decision, right? Because it's like you can't just throw a bunch of people into the fire and expect them to, be able to like not get burned, right?
Yeah.
So it's a process that you got to go through. So first you have to learn it yourself, got to figure out where the mistakes that I've made so I can help educate you on not making the same exact mistake. Oh, hey, you would have made it. You see why you would have made it. Like, let me point it out to you. Now you know not to make that mistake. And if you're using kind of a similar model that we use where they submit it in the mission control, it allows you to really get a good grasp and have a good flow, a workflow to where your time, if you are using a VA, is valuable because you're making that buying decision and they've gone through all the stuff that you wouldn't want to see anyways by that point. So now your time is really, really, really valuable. It could be worth, I think of when I buy, that time is worth thousands and thousands of dollars. That's part of what's going to pay for everything that goes on to support the growth of the business. I still have to be hitting that buy button because that money it's me putting the money in the market. The more that we put in there, again, that's how I can speak so confidently about what our product is and what it is that we're solving for people, because I'm not just a creator of it. I use the product, like we all share the same exact product. You're using the same exact product I use, and that's how I like doing it. That's how I take all the excuses away. Right. It's like, I go through it too. I go through it too. It's not like I'm living out over here in some like la la land where you experience something that I don't experience. We experience it all the same. It's just, how we all handle it. And, if you have to live off the store, that's why I say it's so important. If you got to live off the store, those things really affect you. If you don't have to live off the store, it's just kind of like, okay, we got to deal with this problem. We'll get past it. And, that's part of being a business owner / entrepreneur too, right? The levels of problems that you can handle. I think we say the bigger the challenge, the bigger the opportunity.
That's right. Yeah, the poster in the background. Nice. Yeah, it really is like you say, it's just how much risk you can tolerate. And if you're not relying like on the money on a monthly basis and instead have that long-term mentality, most things are just a bump in the road. Whereas, if you get suspended and you're relying on it for an income, now you could go behind on like a mortgage payment or something. Because
that's not good.
Is an inventory. Yeah. So like,
not good.
It's the difference of how much risk can you tolerate based on your time frame. And definitely the longer the time frame, the more risk. Hey,
don't tell the entrepreneurs out there, but man, I think most people should just have a damn job and set this stuff up as a side hustle, right? Like just go like find ways to really make money. Like in a job, you can be a really good salesperson. You can do a lot of stuff in a job that makes you pretty good money. And then you can take the money from the job, you put it into your assets, and then let those assets that's when you can start living off the income from the store. If you have something that's, kind of like a way to fund everything,
I agree. It makes every dollar you make now more valuable, and hopefully you can retire quicker in the future. That's kind of like my goal of investing in, crypto and my Amazon business and everything I have going on. It's not necessarily to get rich tomorrow. It's so that I don't have to be working till I'm 70 years old. That's kind of the goal.
Me too, man. I mean, that's it's about how do you deploy the money that you're making. Where I see a mistake that just too many people make is they buy material things before it's time to buy the material things. Like go through the crappy part, go through the couple years, delay gratification, and build that asset. And then you could buy anything that you ever really truly want. Like it gets to a point where money no longer is the limiting factor to, all the decisions that you make. But, I'm a big believer that, you should be putting your money into things that are going to produce multiples for you, like that's why it's like, if you have a job and you could take the excess from that job and put it into your investment. Like what makes Amazon great is it's pretty quick, right? Like the turnaround is a lot faster than you're going to get where like, let's say you go buy a piece of real estate, right? Like you're not going to make fast turnarounds on that cash, whereas, with Amazon, I mean, you can really get 30, 40, 50% return on your money if you're willing to wait long enough, or if you want to turn it a whole bunch of times, you can make lesser than that, but turn it 6, 7, 8 times a year, depending on kind of like how much you have floating out there. And, but it's a much faster cash flow generation machine. But I just picked that up from Grant Cardone, where he said it makes sense to me. Like people who have jobs, even the most wealthy people on the planet have jobs, right? Like they work on boards, or they eventually they become investors. But I think that there's this like allure, like there's this disillusion around entrepreneurship, that like entrepreneurship's like this freedom past the freedom, where in reality it's like it's significantly harder than just having a job and investing your money.
Yeah.
And if you, but that means find something that you actually enjoy doing too, right? Like when I was in the workforce, I hated what I did. I mean, I kind of got to be an entrepreneur by accident, because I never liked any of my jobs. I never felt like I had any opportunity. So this has been my way of kind of being able to build something that I enjoy doing. First, I don't work. I like working, so I like coming to work. I like what we get to do. And where I think that a lot of people really have to ask themselves that, do you actually like what you're doing in the first place? Especially when it comes to building a business, right? Do you like this? We've had customers, right, that have, been with us for years. And like my advice to them after years of them saying, hey, I'm still not getting it, it's like, just stop. Like maybe you just don't like this. Maybe it's just not for you. And it's okay. It doesn't like mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means you don't like what you're doing here. And that's just not a way to go through life anyways.
Yeah. And Amazon's not, the end all be all. There's lots of opportunities out there. So this is just one opportunity. There's another opportunity literally everywhere you look. So I agree with you. If this isn't working for you, there's no need to make yourself miserable. There's no need to make Ecom solutions miserable by like complaining all the time. Like there's other things out there to do. So
exactly. It's like we have the whole test, like, is it going to kill you, right? Like, is that bad decision going to kill you? Like with the whole I think just at the end of the day, like when people are buying inventory, they put an emotional attachment to that, and you just have to let go of the emotional attachment and look at the overall big picture here and what you're doing with your money. Sometimes you're going to make bets that don't work out for you. Yeah. But if you get good at kind of, just like if you were a day trader trying to trade stocks, or you're a long-term investor trying to identify undervalued companies, it's not that much different, right? It's really not that much different than doing that. It's just on a smaller scale. Like I can't go buy, like right now I can just go buy 1 million shares of Apple. I don't have the money to do it, but I'm just saying, like I could buy a ton of Apple stock and I do nothing. I just let them go run the business. I tell you, one of my biggest regrets, Tyler, is if I could go back in time, I would take some of the money that I've invested into kind of growing my company, and I would have bought Amazon stock with it. Because Jeffy B did a pretty dang good job of growing that company. I've been around for 8 years and I missed out on all that growth. I've been selling on the platform, but man, I could have probably been a multimillionaire by this point by just investing into that stock and saying, I'm just going to ride the Amazon train.
Just be all in on everything Amazon, like buy their stock, sell on Amazon, buy everything from Amazon. Like, I could see it for sure. Yeah,
yesterday, I told you this, there was a guy delivering on my street the other day. I have about 20 houses on the street, and he literally stopped at 8 of the houses. I asked him, I said, how many houses did you stop at? He said 8. And that's insane to think, 8 houses on a tiny little street in anywhere America. That's what's happening.
Like 40% of people. I'm sure if you were to look at like, middle class homes, like the people that are making, decent money or average money, at least, I wonder how often they get an Amazon package delivered to their house.
I can tell you my household's almost every single day.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. it's not too late. If you want to invest some money in Amazon, I'm sure you'll be fine long run.
I know.
But
Yeah, it's just like one of those things where it's like, that's like a very passive investment, right? Where I do nothing.
yeah.
And that's like you're betting on the fact that you're betting on those people that run that company to really do better with that money than you're going to do on your own. And clearly they have. I would have did way better just investing into Amazon.
Yeah.
But
Makes
here
sense.
we are. We're doing
But
you
now,
got something good
now you're helping people create businesses. How many clients are there now? There's over 200 like total,
Not
right? With
now,
everything.
yeah, we have there's the churn, right? So we're up to about 150 active
150. Okay.
active people that are like participating.
Yeah, so that's
So
150 people that are getting business experience and learning. Obviously, not every single person is going to have a great experience, but the ones that really want to win, you're giving them the opportunity to do that, which is huge.
and we want everyone to have a great experience, but
Yeah.
yeah, I guess reality sometimes is expectations are different than what we can provide. Like we do the best that we can to provide what we provide. And there's some times where people just want more, or again, there's the mental side of things where they're not quite at that point mentally yet that they can handle, the emotional side of having outlay of cash, risk, right? Risk of cash, risk of loss of cash, and being able to take that. And sometimes some people just, and it's very rare. Most people are really nice. Like we really do have a lot of really good, happy people. It's the loud people. It's always the squeaky wheel, right? That gets that makes it seem like, wow, gosh, this is just terrible. When it's like, when you take a step back, you're like, oh man, that one person just, they're not representative about what's going on.
Yeah, it's funny how the same people are the ones you hear about their problems over and over again, and then some people just solve everything themselves. And
There's a lot to that, right? Like people that are going to be successful in life are going to be successful in life. It's not a matter of whether Jason O'Neill, yes, I want to be a part of it, right? Like I want to be someone that someone one day will say, I'm glad that I came into contact with Jason. I learned a lot from him. There was a net positive result of partnering up with Jason. I didn't get taken advantage of. He actually did the best that he could to help me. And because of that, I'm grateful, that at the end of the day, that's why you do any of this stuff. Cause you also get exposed to the other side, which is the hurtful side of the people that, don't like what you put out there into the world. And you can't let that be what determines whether or not you move forward with something, cause if you let the naysayers be what determines whether or not you move forward with something, you're letting the wrong side win,
the negative energy, you're letting the negative energy win. For sure.
Yeah. And, like the people that we associate ourselves with, I was talking to you about some people, right? That it's like, if they're bringing negative energy into any type of setting, like set them aside and say, stop, or get the F out. Like nobody wants to be subjected to that, because there's other people that are trying to do things. They don't need for you to pile your problems onto them. Like there's no, we're not, like how people process, success and failure. That's the hardest part when you're in the world of trying to quote unquote help people make money, right? Because expectations are sometimes very far different than reality, and I think there's been a common theme that we've talked about where, if you don't put the work in, you don't have the capital, this probably isn't the best business for you. Like if you're like, you really are like, I got a couple $1,000s that I could put on a credit card, probably not like a great business. It just means you're not ready to put that money into this particular market. You need to find a way to make some cash, go figure out how do you become a consultant? What are you an expert at? What can you really help people with? Start putting value into the world and get paid for that knowledge. And then you have some extra money that you could put into those passive, income streams.
Agreed. 100%. So I guess, let's just end the interview here. And if anyone has any questions, they can leave those in the comments below. I'll put some links to some videos I've done in the past about ecom solutions. A lot of updates have happened in Seats with the filters, all of that are really awesome. So I'll do a live product research video to follow up this interview. And anyone that's interested in joining Seats and, Ecom Solutions, please hit me up. I will give you the rundown. I think you can schedule a call now, right, Jason, and have, some talk to somebody before.
Yeah. So we are in the very tail end where we'll have a nice little kind of a video they can watch. It's only 15 minutes. They can get a really good understanding of what it is that we do, how we solve problems, the 3 problems that we solve for Amazon sellers, not having to go get set up with your own suppliers, not having to go through the tech overload, and not having to touch any single product. So we have a quick video. At about 3 minutes in that video, you can click a link and there will be a form. We have some qualification questions that we ask, just because we're not really set up to teach people what the buy box is, so someone that doesn't have an Amazon store or just established it yesterday or last month, for them to really be aware that, hey, there's challenges with a new store. You're not going to be ungated, right? You're aware of those challenges, right? So we have some qualification questions that we ask someone to fill out. And if they go through the qualification questions, everything checks out, we'll get on the phone and we'll talk to them about how our program works and how they can become a member of our community and be accessing, some of the amazing growth that we have ahead.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. But besides that, if anyone else, or if anyone has any questions, feel free to hit me up on Instagram or Facebook. And I will be happy to get back to you on anything, that you may need help with. Appreciate you coming on, Jason, and doing this interview. We'll do another one in another 4 months, and hopefully, we can talk more about some development. And I know we got a lot of stuff going on in the background with bulk buys, and we won't even get into that now, but hopefully in 4 months from now, we'll be talking about that. And yeah. Thanks for watching, guys. And like I said, if you have any questions, leave those in the comments below. Thanks, Jason.